My name is Josh Blalock. I am a Microsoft MVP. I do tend to wear a cowboy hat often. I think that's the primary reason Sarah has attended today. Thanks for coming, Sarah. All right. And then a little bit about me and my social media presence there. Most of my stuff today, aside from being noisy on Twitter and LinkedIn, tends to be YouTube videos covering devices or how-tos related to that. So it's fitting that I'm doing a device management session, but you can find all that stuff out at those links as well. So enough about me. Here's our agenda. We've crossed off the first two items. Well, we're crossing off the second item. But the way we want to step through this topic is by hitting up some of the definitions and acronyms that we're going to be covering frequently throughout this session. We want to talk about the options that are native to the Microsoft Teams platform, and then talk about some of the Microsoft tools that are not necessarily Teams native tools, but do end up getting used for managing devices. And then talk about some third-party tools, or OEM. We are going to define OEM in just a second if you're not already familiar with OEM. Then we'll go to a last little kind of recap of what to use when, and then jump into Q&A. Let me just say that I'm not sure the ability to interact, honestly, from the audience side. But if there is a way to interrupt me and ask questions in the middle of presentation, I am totally open to that. I love conversational presentations rather than me talking at you. So yeah, just to put that out there in terms of how I like a session to flow. All right, devices and definitions. First up, IP phones. These are the different types. This slide really encompasses the different types of devices that fall into that certified list that Microsoft has programs for when they certify devices. These are the categories that you're going to see if you go into the Teams Admin Center, which we're going to cover in a moment as well. We've got our IP phones. Obviously, we're talking telephony here, telephones. These are, instead of being your old analog devices, these are going to be devices with displays on them. They're going to be signed into with a Teams account. They're phones. They're for making, placing and receiving calls. You've got Teams rooms. These are the devices and the systems that will be present in a conference room, or as an individual might choose to use them as well. They can use Teams rooms. It's a little bit of overkill, but if you look at my background, you see that I tend to tinker with several different rooms. So they are sometimes an all-in-one solution. Sometimes they are a multi-part component system. We'll take a little bit of a look at what that looks like. We're not really here to talk about the ins and outs of what a Teams room is or what any of these devices are. We just want to cover the fact that they are these categories and we need to know how to manage them. Collaboration bars are kind of a Teams room, but they are broken down in a different category by Microsoft in terms of how they're managed within their admin centers. They are typically placed in rooms, though again, you can sign into a collaboration bar with a personal account. They're all-in-one devices that typically will have your camera on them, your speakers, your microphone, and then an onboard Android operating system, which is really what distinguishes them from the Teams rooms side. When we talk about Teams rooms from a management standpoint, at least in the Teams Admin Center, these are typically going to be your Windows-based room systems. So collaboration bars, all-in-one room systems that are Android-based. Teams displays, also Android-based. They are a little device that will sit on your desktop that has a display and is meant to kind of be this all-in-one Teams client in a separate piece of equipment from your laptop. It can be used in conjunction with your laptop, but so that you can kind of separate out your Teams meetings and calls from the processing power of your PC. So Teams displays, there are a couple of those in the market. They have their own place in the admin center as well. Teams panels, relatively new category to the Teams world. These are those little schedulers that sit on the outside of a conference room so that you can schedule a room ad hoc, see which meetings are scheduled for the day, what meetings are in progress, maybe allow upcoming meeting participants to check in on the Teams panel so that long-running meeting presenters will know that their meetings are going over, and the next inhabitants of the room are ready to start their meeting. That's what Teams panels are. And then personal devices. So these are not a category in the Teams Admin Center. These are things like your headsets, your webcams, your speaker phones, all those kind of the little pucks, all those little things that are used by individuals that need to get managed, need to get updated, but aren't really done at an admin level, at least traditionally, and at least in the Microsoft Teams Admin Center. And we'll kind of break into that a little bit more in a minute here. So those are the general categories of devices that we're talking about today when we're talking about certification. A couple of those acronyms, we will see MTROW and MTROA on several different slides. The first is Microsoft Teams Rooms on Windows, and the second is on Android. So just keep that in mind. While a lot of this presentation focuses on rooms, because there are a lot more management capabilities that have been rolled out and deployed and developed around rooms. But we are going to talk about how to manage some of the other categories as well. And then OEM, we mentioned that earlier. That stands for Original Equipment Manufacturer. These are the companies that are the ones manufacturing Teams devices. There's several that come to mind. I will just pop one that comes to the top of my head really quickly. Logitech, for instance, is an OEM. No, I see a little bit of laughter there, so you got that. All right, cool. Moving along. Let's talk about the native Teams platform. First off, we've got the Teams Admin Center. The Teams Admin Center is, I want to say it's the free option, but the reality is you're going to use this if you've already paid for licensing and devices. When you sign into those devices, and let's say, for instance, we're talking about rooms here. If you've got an MTR, Microsoft Teams Room, and you've applied a Teams Room standard license, and then signed into that MTR, it automatically gets populated into the Teams Admin Center. Same with your phones, your collaboration bars, your displays, your panels. You sign into them with a licensed Teams account, and they will eventually populate into the Teams Admin Center. And this is where you're going to come to manage those devices, at least on the level that you're able to manage them here. The address for that is up top, teams.microsoft.com. Just throw an admin on the front of that, and that, if you have the rights in your organization, will bring you to the admin center that you can manage many team settings, but your devices as well. All those categories I just talked about, you see them all listed out underneath devices here. What can you do in the TAC, as it is commonly referred to on the social media interwebs out there? Most of these functions apply to all the devices, but there are a couple nuances that I wanted to call out in this little graphic here. My meeting. Okay, let's not do that. Let's go back to my presentation. Sorry. All right, I'm moving that out of the way. I want to be able to see you all there on the screen that I'm looking at, but you don't want it to get in the way of the slide here. There's a number of things you can do in the Admin Center, and I've broken it down by the categories we just talked about. So right up top, you can look at the device health and details. You want to know what version that it's running. You want to know serial numbers, things like that are populated. You want to see if the devices are online, if they're out of date. All that stuff can be viewed across all those categories. You can update the firmware on all those categories except Teams Rooms. Now, a little caveat there. Firmware does get updated for Teams Rooms standard licensing, but it's not something you have the ability to go in and say update on. It will update automatically when it is good and ready per the schedule that Teams Rooms update on. So you don't have the ability to go into the Admin Center and click that update button for Teams Rooms. Everything else, there is an update button. You'll see if updates are ready. They will update on their own, but you can also proactively update them if the update hasn't applied yet. You can restart all the devices from within the Teams Admin Center, so a little bit of remote capability that is important there. Assigning a config profile. So there is a way to go in and set several little local security settings and other little management settings that you would typically want to have applied to things like a phone. Let's say you're talking about a common area phone and you want to make sure that you've You're applying a pin locking policy to all other phones, but not your common area phone, because anyone needs to be able to use that. You'll create these config profiles to assign different settings to different devices, and then you can apply those config profiles, if you so desire, to every category except rooms. Collecting device logs, you can do that across the board. MTR settings. Now we're talking about meeting settings here, or things that are particular to MTRs. I want to go and say that these room systems can now participate in Zoom meetings and Cisco WebEx meetings via the direct guest join set. I can change that in the Teams Admin Center for a particular room or several rooms. So that's something that is particular to Teams rooms. You don't do that on other devices. Reviewing your call history and health. So maybe you've got someone calling in to complain about, the health or the stability of a particular room or a phone. They're complaining of getting frequent bad calls, lots of garbled audio, whatever the case may be. You can go look at the history of all of these devices except Teams panels, because they are not a calling device. You look at the history for all these devices, see which calls have been placed, and then you can dig into those calls to see, were they good calls? Were they bad calls? What was flagged as bad? Was it network issues? Was it the particular device being used on one end? That's all available for all the devices, again, except panels. And then tags, you can create various tags, assign them to all your devices, and then filter and sort by tags as well for reporting and organizing, essentially, is what that's there for. And your management history. So if updates have been applied, if you've taken actions on these devices from the Teams Admin Center, you can review the history of which actions have been taken on all those devices as well. So that is what we can do with the Teams Admin Center. And again, this is more of your free option once you have paid for licensing and bought your devices and signed into Teams. Without paying anything extra, you have the Teams Admin Center. These devices are already going to show up there, and this is what you can do. Now, there are other things that we're going to pry into that you get beyond that. What I want to point out here is that the capabilities of these devices, just because for like a Teams room, for example, just because you can't manually update it in the Teams Admin Center, it doesn't mean that these devices aren't already being updated on their own. There are a nightly schedule that runs on Teams rooms to update the devices and make sure that they have the latest OS updates as well as firmware updates from the OEMs. There are things that are already happening to proactively manage the devices and let them run on their own, so that you don't have to get involved if you don't have a requirement to get involved deeper. There's a lot that can be done at the Teams Admin Center level. That does not meet requirements across the board, though. And that's where we move into other options. Before we get to the premium option, though, one new thing in the Teams Admin Center is the notifications and alerts section. And there is this rules subcategory. And there is a single rule that exists right now, and that's all that exists, and you cannot create more right now. As this exists in the Teams Admin Center today, it is a very minimal launch. What you can do today, and there is more to come, you can say which devices are going to alert, and right now they're only going to alert if the devices go offline. So you'll say, hey, alert when devices for Josh Blalock go offline, and that will send a notification. Then you get to configure where the notification goes. It'll either go to a Teams channel, which is awesome, because then the Teams channel gets notified, and if you've got a help desk channel, that's helpful, right? Or a webhook, which is a little more customized. So you can go in and create your own webhooks for where you want to send notifications. That's pretty cool. But again, this is a pretty minimal rollout right now. There is more to come per Microsoft in this area down the line, but this is part of what's available freely today in the Teams Admin Center. Now, I'm going to move this again down here. This is going to be the little window that moves around on me here. Microsoft Teams Rooms Managed Services. This is Microsoft's new-ish premium offering. Devices can show up in this separate admin center if they have been assigned the Teams Rooms premium license, which does come at a more premium price tag than the standard license. Unlike with just signing into the devices don't just show up in this admin center. In addition to having the proper license, there is an actual enrollment process that you need to go through, where you download an agent and you grab a key and you enroll these devices, and then they show up in the cloud. And so this portal is accessible through portal.rooms.microsoft.com, and that W is an accident, so don't put that at the end of the address. We'll get that off. But you get a little view from this view, a little idea from this view right here of what can be done. I saw a little bit of a playground there that we've got on the at work for the portal side. The services that are included in this. So essentially, we're talking about what is the additional value that you get from this premium license? Why would I go to this and not just stick with the Teams Admin Center? And there's a number of services that I have stolen this screenshot right from Microsoft's own website, but a number of things that make this a premium offering. First, your updates are much more flexible. You get to use the predefined rings that you can place rooms in, or create your own rings and decide when you want updates to apply to different devices. Maybe you want executive devices to wait 90 days before they get the newest update. Maybe you've got a sandbox room system that you want to take updates at the soonest possible moment. You can control your OS and firmware updates with more granularity than you can in the Teams Admin Center. The other thing I want to just take a step back that I didn't say right away is we kind of covered what you can do in the Teams Admin Center, and that applies to all those devices. Now we're talking about rooms specifically, and this is where a lot of the challenge comes for organizations. The other devices, those are just going to get managed in the Teams Admin Center. You don't manage phones through the premium portal at this stage or anywhere else. You don't manage the other devices in other locations. Those are just managed in the Teams Admin Center for now. The premium section is where we're talking about our rooms. All right, we talked about updates. You've got different policies for your configuration management, patching, other things that you want to tailor that can be configured. Dedicated experts. This is kind of one of the big deals, right? If something goes wrong or you need help from Microsoft and you're seeing it in the Teams Admin Center, you have to open a regular support ticket, and you're subject to regular support timelines, all that jazz. That may not be a bad experience, but it may not be the most fast experience either. And so the dedicated experts, they're 24/7 by 365. Pretty sure this is a typo on Microsoft's part, the 356. I can't imagine there are 9 days out of the year where they say, yeah, you're on your own, premium is taking a day off. So it's probably 24/7 by 365 that they intended to put there. But the idea is that they are proactively managing your environment. If something goes wrong with the device, an incident gets triggered, this ticket gets created, and they start to look at it. If it requires their attention, and if their predictive remediation and their AI capabilities don't remediate the room issue on its own, then their experts are notified. They will dig in, try to solve the problem on their own. And if they need to include you as the customer, they will then reach out and do that as needed. They will also work with the OEMs in the background if there is an OEM specific issue they need to dig into. So that right there is where a lot of the value comes in for this premium service. You kind of get to take a step back, not worry about if a device has an issue, if a peripheral goes offline or shows is not online, whatever the case is. Someone's going to attempt to handle this for you first and only notify you if it gets to a point where they can't solve the problem without you physically doing something on site.
Josh?
Yes.
Is that global?
Is it what?
That support, is it global? Is that the same no matter where you are?
It is global, but I don't have the details as far as which locales it is currently available in. I would have to get back to you offline on that. Awesome question, though.
Thank you.
I believe it's a limited market at this stage until this is, it's kind of how Microsoft, they roll things out in increments and per region. And so that's, yeah, good question. I'll try to circle back around on that. I already kind of shoehorned in the real-time monitoring and alerts there, enhanced insights. This gives you insights about there are things that are already there and things that are coming on the roadmap, and as far as how many people what is room capacity? Are we over room capacity in these rooms? Are they being utilized as much as they should be? So there's enhanced insights that you get to know if you're getting the best value out of your rooms, or you need to do some additional planning to maximize the investment that you've already placed in those rooms. And then threat detection. There are some AI threat detection capabilities from the Microsoft 365 side that Microsoft has built into the service as well, so that, you know, if there are incidents, a ticket will get created, they will work on them. If there are missing security KBs, they will work on those as well and notify you again where notification is needed. So there's a lot of checkboxes here that are on top of the Teams Admin Center that come with the premium offering. Again, requires a premium license, and you've got to actually enroll the devices for this. All right, just a quick screenshot of kind of what it looks like. This is from Microsoft's website as well, what it looks like within the managed services portal at like one of those reports, for example. So they've gone into reports, they've clicked on the health tab, and they can go by 30 days, 90 days, 7 days, and they see all these different rooms. They click on a room and they can see, okay, we got 66 managed rooms. What's our average health? When we click on a room, then we get even more insights there into how many tickets we've had, how much has this impacted our meetings, what are the settings of the room. You can really dig in, get a lot of data well beyond what the Teams Admin Center gives you. So if you need to just deploy a room and kind of set it and forget it unless something goes wrong, Teams Admin Center is going to work great. If you need advanced insights, if you need proactive remediation, if you need constant 365 support, you're probably going to want to look at the managed services side of things for your rooms. Let's talk a little bit about some of the non-native Microsoft tools as well. So these are not shifting to the OEM side yet. This is still stuff from Microsoft. And we're going to have several caveats that we call out at the bottom of each of these slides. You will notice that most of the next couple slides here apply only to MTROW, which, as we talked about earlier, is Windows. That means collaboration bars or other certified Teams Android-based devices are not included in these solutions. So the first one here, Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. If you are a customer or have customers that are using Endpoint Config Manager, then you might be interested in including your Teams rooms and what you're already doing there, because clearly this is a part of your device management solution. These are devices, you're going to want to manage them. Managing them is going to be a little different because, again, you're going to have to think about this in terms of, are we deploying only Windows? And if we're not deploying only Windows, do we still want to control our Windows devices through Config Manager and then deal with Android on the side? If you do want to do Config Man, I'm not here to do a deep dive on this. I have included a link up top that will give you a deeper dive directly from Microsoft's Docs site. It is a comprehensive blog post or document from Microsoft that goes through several stages of getting these packages ready. Each one of these stages you see here, making sure you've got your prereqs in place, configuring System Center for the OS deployment, building out the packages, building your task sequence, and finally validating the solution and deploying. That is, all those are covered in a lot of detail on that link. I am not a config man specialist myself. This is not an area I specialize in. It is an area that when I talk to customers who want to do this, I say, great, here's an overview of how to do that. Go check that out and work with your local config man experts in-house or at your consultancy that you work with to actually deploy this and make it happen, because it is involved. There is a lot there. And especially if you're not going to be a Windows only shop, you really need to stop and consider, is this even something you want to embark on? Is this something you want to do? Or is there a better way to manage your entire portfolio in a more cohesive manner that isn't broken up by type of device? So Microsoft Endpoint Config Manager, definitely an option for some of these devices, but take these caveats with a grain of salt and point the people that know Config Manager at that URL, because it has all the custom packages that apply to room systems specifically. So there is that route as well if you're going to deploy Windows only. Intune. So this is another one of those Windows only options for now, right? It doesn't apply to the Android side of things yet, but I have 2 links that are clickable on this page. So if you are interested in checking this out, come back, grab the presentation, check out these links. The first one is up top, and it is a tech community blog post, and it gives a guide on how to go through the various steps here. First, how to enroll the devices. They recommend that you enroll your devices in Intune by doing the Azure AD domain join on the devices, which will automatically enroll the devices, and that is the path of least resistance. They do provide links in that post to several other methods for enrolling your Windows devices into Intune that you can go down those paths if you prefer as well. Let's say you're not doing AD domain join, okay? You need to explore your other options. But you enroll the devices in Intune. You need to set up the Windows 10 configuration profiles. There are a number of profiles that can be deployed. So you'll deploy some of these, and then you're going to want to pay special attention at that blog post to the profiles that they call out as being either not recommended or flat out not supported. And those you definitely don't want to do. I put a couple of the not recommended ones in there. They don't recommend you set up a VPN config profile or Wi-Fi for these devices or Windows information protection. Again, these are Windows room system devices. So you're going to configure some of your typical Windows 10 profiles, not all. For compliance policies, this is a big reason why you use Intune, right? You want to make sure your devices are compliant, that you're only allowing them onto the environment under certain conditions. This is a big caveat. Policies, the compliance policies are only going to be, they're not going to be typical for like the rest of your Windows 10 devices. So if you're deploying a broadly applied compliance policy to cover your Windows 10 devices, and they have things in there like, you know, limiting meeting times or things that are going to be bad for a room system, you might want to take a look at what those policies would be and configure your exceptions to those policies for the room systems, or create new policies that apply just to the room systems and create that scope to be more granular. It just is something that requires you to go back and do some revisiting, because these aren't just another Windows 10 device to lump in with all of your other Windows 10 devices. So compliance policies, and finally, conditional access. There is a temptation for very security conscious organizations to, you know, really have a lot of conditional access in place. That's great. It's good to be secure. I'm not going to argue at that point, but there is very little that is supported in conditional access at this time when it comes to Teams rooms. Location-based conditions only. In other words, make sure that you're admitting or you're allowing these devices based on their location, based on their IP address on the network, and that's about it. There's not much else you can do conditional access for rooms that is supported. So if you're going to go Intune, if you're wanting to go Intune and part of your drive is to go nuts with conditional access on your room systems, slow your roll and understand that's not going to be possible at this time. I put another link at the bottom from a former MVP and now Microsoft employee, Craig Chippers. He has a great blog on Teams and Microsoft UC in general, but he put together a 4-part blog series on customizing Intune for your rooms to do things like customize your theming, your team settings, and there was 2 other categories in there. If Intune is a path that you want to go, I would highly recommend you take a look at that, because he did an excellent job at breaking down what can be done and how to do it in those 4 blog post series. This top one will really get you started on getting your devices enrolled and getting the framework laid. All right, so that's the other Microsoft solutions that can be worked with outside of the native Teams platform tools that they give you with the Teams Admin Center and the Managed Services portal. The other one here is less of management, right? This is really just a monitoring component. It is using Azure Monitor. I put a link here as well that you can click on for planning to use Azure Monitor if you're going to, because as you can see with the screenshot that I stole from Microsoft's website again, you've got a couple different MTR devices. They've got the app that runs on the MTR. They've got their Windows event log. And then there's this Azure Monitor agent that will gather information from both the app and that event log and send it up to Azure Monitor in the cloud. There are several things that you've got to do to prepare for this with a Azure storage account and getting the agents on the devices. So there's things to do. That's why you need to check out the plan for Azure Monitor link. But this is what it looks like at a high level. Essentially, and again, as you see right up top, this is for Windows only, not for Android. The agent runs on the MTR, the logs are parsed in Azure Monitor, and the administrator gets notified of key events per the triggers and things that they have set up. That's the gist of it. Pretty baseline capability there. It's a monitoring solution and a notification solution only for Windows room systems. I don't want to call this legacy, or the config manager side is legacy, or the Intune side is legacy, because they're certainly not legacy. But they are things that you might have considered doing earlier with room systems rather than presently with room systems. And that is because when these solutions were initially rolled out, the idea was that there were going to be Windows-based room systems, and these would cover all those systems. And then as time went on, Android room systems came into the picture, and they started to get all the Android-based components of them. The room system environment or scene started to get a lot more complex, and suddenly these Windows-only solutions were great for the Windows machines, but they left out the whole Android side of the business. Whether or not they're ever going to catch up, that's yet to be seen. I would venture to say no in some instances. But before an organization decides to use any of these last three tools I mentioned, they really have some questions to answer internally about what room systems are we deploying, what is our environment going to look like, and are we going to have a broken management experience if we use one of these tools that was originally intended for what was previously a Windows-only ecosystem. All right, third-party OEM tools. Again, the original equipment manufacturers, you've got several out there: Logitech, Poly, Yealink, Audio Codes, several out there that are developing different devices for different categories of devices that are team certified. And they deliver a series of tools that will build on top of what Microsoft has already put out there. Let me move this one more time. All right. Two categories that you're typically going to see OEMs build tools for device management for. First is the personal peripherals. And if you've been kind of noticing, to those that haven't fallen asleep and are still with me, I applaud you. This is not the most riveting of content ever, but it's an important topic. But if you've noticed over all the last few slides, we've talked a lot about room systems and a little bit about the other devices, Android-based devices that are available in the Teams Admin Center, your IP phones, your panels, your displays. But we haven't talked at all about the personal peripherals that we first mentioned, your headsets, your webcams, the speaker phones that sit on your desk. These are not covered in the Teams Admin Center or in the Premium portal or in any of those other Microsoft solutions that we talked about. There are a number of things that you need to do or want to do as an IT admin organization to manage these devices. You want to make sure that you can change device settings or instruct users how to change device settings. Maybe you want to turn off things like auto framing on some of their webcams, or you want to set certain white balance settings or things like that if you know what you're doing in a webcam, right? Or maybe there's audio settings on a headset that you want to change. Firmware updates, just like other devices, these personal peripherals are going to get updates from the manufacturers to bring new functionality, to fix bugs, to do all kinds of things. Those need to be applied in some shape or fashion. There is a couple different ways that these are managed right now. There are the PC or laptop client that you can download from the OEM to your own laptop. You connect your device to your laptop or PC or whatever you're using with USB or Bluetooth dongle, and the agent, the client that you have installed on your machine, detects that device from the OEM, and says, oh, great, I've got for instance, if it was a like Logi Tune from Logitech, and I had a Brio plugged in, which I'm using to do this session right now, it would say, oh, I see the Brio. I've got a firmware update. Do you want to update it? Do you want to turn off some of these settings or optimize the device in some kind of way? That's what that agent would do. Some OEMs also provide mobile clients so that you can go and, maybe you're using your headset with your phone for music, or you're doing a Teams call from your phone. There's also apps for the phone to be able to manage your settings there as well. This is going to differ very widely per OEM. It is not a one size fits all. Not all OEMs are going to have the same capabilities or functionality. Not all of them are going to have clients in the same places. So it's something to consider when you're thinking about the devices that you're purchasing. How can you manage these personal peripherals as you deploy them, especially in a world where people are spread all over the place? They're not just at work anymore. They're widely at home or on the go or in a number of places. Managing devices is going to be something you have to think about.
So we only have a couple minutes left in the time, Josh. So I'd like to open it up for questions.
Got it. Okay. Awesome.
So any questions?
I was going to ask about the popularity trends between the devices, because the impact of hybrid of work, but I've got a client call in about 20 minutes. So Josh, is it okay if I ask you offline?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm thinking that personal peripherals is going to become a more important part of device management as we shift to this new hybrid way of working.
It absolutely will, and it kind of ties into this room solutions thing over here. There's all the same stuff you can do in the Teams Admin Center. Well, not all the same stuff, some of the same stuff. There's going to be some overlap with OEM solutions with the Teams Admin Center or Premium. But then there's going to be additional capabilities that the OEM can provide on the support side, or reporting, or role-based access, and various OEMs have cloud portals as well. And I think that it'll be an interesting world as we watch how personal peripherals begin to potentially find their way into a cloud-based solution that gives IT management greater control. So, yeah, definitely a good thing to hone into. That's going to be a trend that we see develop over time. If there's any other questions, I'll just fast forward to the what to use when, so you can kind of chew on this last slide as questions roll in. But yeah, there's several questions to ask as you embark
the question
on the journey of what to manage where. And really, it comes down to what devices are you getting, what platforms are you running on, what are your actual requirements for reporting, etc. Based on those answers, your tools that you're going to use are going to change or vary, and it's not going to be a one size fits all at all. So, other questions?
Follow up to the question on where MTR managed services support is available. It's anywhere that M365 is available. So if you guys want to email me at Sean, SHAUN.Olsen, OLSEN, at Microsoft.com, I can provide you the link to that page and the supported regions.
Thanks for being here, Sean. Awesome to hear you.
Yeah, you gotta go way over there. Okay, I think that is the end of the questions. Very exciting.